The mysterious visitor. It was a quiet night. The city outside was asleep, and the only sound in the apartment was the soft ticking of the clock. Jake had just turned off the lights and lay in bed, his eyes half closed, when he heard it, a whisper. "Jake." His eyes snapped open. His heart pounded. He sat up quickly, scanning the dark room. The air felt strange, like something was different. Then he saw her. A woman stood near the foot of his bed, but she was not human. Her skin had a soft silver-blue glow. Her eyes were large, shining like liquid gold. Her hair floated slightly as if touched by an unseen wind. She was beautiful but unnatural, like someone out of a dream. Jake's breath caught in his throat. His body froze. Who was she? How did she get in? Before he could speak, she raised a slender hand. Her voice was soft, almost desperate. "Please, do not be afraid. I need your help." Jake blinked. Was he dreaming? His mind raced. He had locked the doors. The windows were shut. There was no way anyone could have entered. And yet she was here, standing in front of him. He swallowed hard. Who are you?" She hesitated. Then she took a slow step closer. "My name is Zyra. I have nowhere else to go." Jake's instincts screamed at him to run, to grab his phone, to call someone. But something in Zyra's eyes stopped him. She looked afraid. Then, a noise outside. A heavy thud near the window. Then another. Footsteps. Someone was there. Zyra gasped, her golden eyes wide with fear. She suddenly rushed forward and fell to her knees beside Jake's bed. "They are coming. Please, hide me." Jake's brain went blank. "What? Who's coming?" he whispered. She grabbed his wrist, her fingers cool but trembling. "They will take me. They will hurt me." Jake's pulse pounded in his ears. He turned towards the window. Shadows moved outside. 3 men, dressed in black. They were checking the apartment numbers, looking for her. His mind screamed, "This is crazy. This isn't real." But the fear in Zyra's eyes told him otherwise. Then, a knock at the door. Jake stiffened. His breath caught in his throat. The knock came again, louder this time. Bang, bang, bang. "Open up," a deep voice commanded. Zyra's grip tightened on Jake's wrist. Her hands were ice-cold now. "Please," she whispered. Jake felt his body move before his brain decided. He reached for the blanket and threw it over her, pushing her down beside the bed. The knocking became pounding. They were going to break the door down. Jake stood up, his legs shaking. He walked to the door, his heart beating like a drum. He barely had time to take a deep breath before. Crack! The door burst open. 3 men stormed in. They wore black coats, their eyes sharp, scanning the room. One of them, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, stepped forward. His gaze locked onto Jake. "Where is she?" Jake swallowed. "Who?" The scared man stepped closer, his eyes cold. "Don't play games, kid. We know she came here." Jake's hands clenched into fists. Think. "Look, I live alone. I don't know what you're talking about," he said, forcing his voice to stay steady. The man stared at him. Then his eyes flicked toward the bed. Jake's breath caught. Did he see her? Did she move? The man stepped forward, reaching for the blanket. Suddenly, a loud crash outside. The men turned toward the window. The sound of sirens echoed in the distance. "Time's up," one of them muttered. The scared man glared at Jake. "If you're lying, you'll regret it." With that, they rushed out, disappearing into the night. Jake stood there, frozen, heart pounding. What just happened? Then, movement. He turned. Zyra slowly lifted the blanket off her head, her golden eyes filled with gratitude. "You saved me." Jake exhaled, rubbing his face. "I must be losing my mind." She smiled softly. "No, you are just kind." For a moment, Silence filled the room. Jake knew his life had just changed, but he had no idea how much. Escape or capture. The room was silent, but Jake's mind was a storm. His body still trembled from the close call. The men had left, but they would be back. He knew it. Zira, still crouched near the bed, looked up at him with those glowing golden eyes. "They will return," she said softly. Jake ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. Yeah, no kidding. His apartment was no longer safe. The way those men barged in, like they had authority, like they were used to hunting things. They were professionals. This wasn't just some random break-in. They knew who she was. He turned to her. Who were they? What do they want? She hesitated, then whispered, "They want me, because I am not from here." Jake narrowed his eyes. He had already guessed that much. "Yeah, no offense, but I figured that out the moment I saw you glowing in my bedroom." She flinched. "I do not glow that much. Trust me, you do." For a second, she almost smiled. But then, her expression darkened. "They are hunters. They work for a secret human organization. They capture aliens like me." Jake blinked. "Aliens? Plural. There are more of you?" he asked. She nodded. "Not many. Most do not survive." His stomach twisted. The way she said it, like she had seen it happen, like she had lost others before. A heavy silence filled the air. Then Zara suddenly tensed. Her head snapped toward the window. Jake followed her gaze, and his stomach dropped. A red laser dot appeared on the wall. Sniper. Before he could react, the glass shattered. "Ge-1," Jake shouted. They dove onto the floor as a bullet tore through the air, smashing into the lamp. Sparks flew. Smoke filled the room. More bullets followed, hitting the walls, the furniture. They were shooting to kill. Jake grabbed Zira's wrist and pulled her toward the hallway. "We have to get out of here. Now." She didn't resist. She moved fast, her body almost weightless as she followed him. Jake threw the door open, but as soon as he stepped out, a man was waiting. He was big, dressed in black tactical gear, a rifle aimed right at Jake's chest. Before Jake could react, Zara moved. In a blink, she was in front of him. Her hands flashed with energy, and the man went flying backward, crashing into the wall. Jake's jaw dropped. What the hell? Zira grabbed his hand. "Run." They bolted down the hallway. More men stormed up the stairs, their weapons drawn. Jake barely dodged a bullet as it whizzed past his ear. Zira threw out her hands, and a wave of invisible force slammed into the men, knocking them back like ragdolls. Jake's heart raced. "You could have mentioned you had freaking superpowers." She didn't answer. She just pulled him toward the fire escape. Jake kicked open the emergency door. A cold gust of wind hit his face as they stepped onto the metal staircase outside. He looked down. 6 stories. And at the bottom, more men waiting. "Bad idea," he muttered. Then, a helicopter. Its spotlight blinded them, engines roaring. A voice echoed through a speaker. "Surrender the AS-8." Jake turned to Zira. "I hope you have more tricks, because we are officially screwed." Zira didn't hesitate. She wrapped her arms around him. Jake barely had time to process before she jumped. Off the fire escape, they plummeted 6 stories. Jake screamed. Then, the air shimmered around them. The fall slowed. It was as if gravity itself bent around them. They landed gently on the pavement. Jake's knees nearly gave out. Zira pulled him up. "We keep moving." Jake looked at her, his mind still spinning. What was she? Then, tires screeched. A black van skidded to a stop in front of them. The doors flew open. A masked figure leaned out. "Get in. Now." Jake froze. Another enemy. But Zira grabbed his arm. "Trust me." Against every instinct in his body, Jake jumped into the van. Zira followed, and the doors slammed shut. The van peeled out, racing into the night. Jake turned to the masked driver. "Who the hell are you?" The driver pulled off their mask. It was a woman. Her face was sharp, her expression fierce. Human, but her eyes. Jake realized with a jolt. They glowed faintly, just like Zyra's. "I'm here to save you," she said, "and to stop them before it's too late." The Great Escape. The van tore through the streets at full speed, weaving between cars as the city lights blurred past. Jake clutched the seatbelt, his breath ragged. Zyra sat beside him, tense, her glowing golden eyes locked on the driver. The woman gripped the wheel tightly, her expression focused. She had removed her mask, revealing human features, yet her eyes glowed faintly, just like Zyra's. Jake's mind spun. Who was she? Was she an ally, or was this another trap? Finally, he forced out the question. "Who the hell are you?" The woman didn't look away from the road. "Name's Nova. And right now, I'm your only chance at getting out of this alive." Jake exhaled sharply. Great. More cryptic answers. He turned to Zyra. "Do you know her?" Zyra hesitated. Then she nodded. "Not personally, but I know. Of her kind." Nova's lips curled into a smirk. "Smart girl." Jake was losing patience. What the hell does that mean? Nova took a sharp turn, sending Jake crashing into Zyra's shoulder. "Let me guess," Jake grumbled, trying to steady himself. "Secret government experiment. Alien hybrid. Born in a lab." Nova chuckled. "Close, but not quite." She met his eyes in the rearview mirror. "I wasn't born in a lab, kid. I escaped from one." Jake's stomach twisted. "You're saying they experimented on you?" Nova's jaw tightened. "Not just me. Hundreds of us, humans and aliens, spliced together, bred for a single purpose." Jake swallowed. "And what purpose is that?" Nova's eyes darkened. "To fight a war. The truth about Earth's darkest secret." Zyra shifted uncomfortably. "I feared this." Nova let out a bitter laugh. "Feared? You should be terrified. You have no idea what these people are capable of." Jake clenched his fists. "Start talking. All of it." Nova exhaled. "All right. Here's the short version." She gripped the wheel tighter. "Earth isn't just sitting here minding its own business in the universe. Your governments have known about extraterrestrial life for decades. They've been preparing for war." Jake blinked. "War? With who?" Nova glanced at Zyra. "With her kind." Silence filled the van. Zyra's eyes widened. "No, that is impossible. My people. We are peaceful." Nova scoffed. "Yeah, that's what they all say. But someone up there wants Earth wiped out, and the people running this planet know it." Jake felt like the ground beneath him was crumbling. "So you're telling me that humans are creating alien-human hybrids to fight an intergalactic war?" Nova smirked. "Now you're getting it." Jake shook his head. "That's insane." Nova's expression hardened. "You just saw men with high-tech weapons chasing down an unarmed alien. You think they're playing games? This has been happening for years. The government isn't looking for peace, kid. They're looking for soldiers." Zyra shivered. "I was only here, on a research mission. My people sent me to observe, not to fight." Nova's smirk faded. "Yeah, try telling that to the ones who captured you." Jake could barely process it. A war, secret experiments, alien hybrids. His world had been normal just hours ago, and now he was part of something way bigger than himself. Then Zyra tensed. "They found us. The chase begins." Jake turned just in time to see two black SUVs racing toward them from behind. Nova cursed under her breath. "Damn it. They work fast." She slammed her foot on the gas. The van lurched forward, speeding down an empty highway. The SUVs followed, closing the distance. Jake saw gun barrels poke out from the windows. "Ugh, they're about to shoot at us." Nova pulled a pistol from her jacket and tossed it at him. "Then shoot back." Jake's eyes widened. What? I don't even know how to use this thing. Nova rolled her eyes. Point, and pull the trigger, genius. A loud bang rang out as a bullet shattered the back window. Jake yelped, Okay, okay. He scrambled to aim out the broken window, firing blindly. The gun kicked back hard, nearly flying out of his hand. His shot missed, badly. Nova snorted. That was embarrassing. Zira suddenly placed a hand on Jake's shoulder. A strange warmth spread through him. His breathing slowed. His mind focused. Jake took another shot. This time, it hit. The bullet tore through the tire of one SUV. The vehicle skidded out of control, flipping over. Jake blinked. Holy shit. Zira's hand slipped away. You can do more than you think. The second SUV was still coming. But Nova had a plan. Hold on to something, she shouted. Jake barely had time to react before Nova spun the wheel, sending the van veering off the road. They plunged down a steep hill, smashing through trees and bushes. The SUV tried to follow, but the driver lost control. Jake watched as the vehicle flipped over, crashing into a ditch. Silence. Then laughter. Nova grinned, breathing hard. That was fun. Jake groaned. I think I'm gonna throw up. Zira placed a hand on his back. Breathe. You are safe. Jake exhaled shakily. Yeah, for now. Nova's grin faded. Not for long. They'll send more. She turned to Zira. We need to get you off this planet. Zira's eyes softened. My ship. It was taken. Nova's expression darkened. Then we take it back. Jake stared at both of them. He had no idea what he was getting into. But one thing was clear. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was a war. The secrets of Zira's race. The van rumbled along a deserted road, its tires kicking up dust as it sped through the darkness. Inside, the air was heavy with tension. Nova kept one hand on the wheel, her glowing eyes scanning the road ahead. Zira sat beside her, silent, her expression unreadable. Jake, sitting in the back, rubbed his face with both hands. His world had completely flipped upside down in less than 24 hours. First, an alien woman appeared in his room, begging for help. Then, government hunters stormed in, guns blazing. Now, he was in a van with an alien and an enhanced human hybrid, running from a shadowy organization that was preparing for war with extraterrestrial life. Yeah, this was officially the craziest night of his life. He exhaled and looked at Zira. She hadn't said a word since they escaped. He shifted uncomfortably. You okay? Zira blinked, as if pulled from deep thought. I do not know, she admitted. Jake frowned. That's not exactly comforting. Nova chuckled darkly. Welcome to my life, kid. Jake ignored her. He turned back to Zira. So, what's the deal with you? I mean, no offense, but I don't think most aliens just show up in people's bedrooms asking to crash on their bed. Zira hesitated. Then, she finally spoke. I was sent to observe. Nothing more. Nova snorted. Yeah. Looks like that went to hell. Zira ignored her. My people, we do not interfere. We study. We learn. We watch. Jake narrowed his eyes. So, you're like alien scientists. Zira nodded. Yes, we have studied Earth for a long time. But something changed. Nova's expression darkened. Yeah, humans found out about you. Zira shuddered. It was not supposed to happen. We have cloaking technology. We have rules about non-interference. But something went wrong. My ship was detected. I was captured before I could escape. Jake leaned forward. And then, Zira swallowed. They took me to a facility underground. I do not know where. I was kept in a containment cell for weeks. They studied me. Jake's stomach twisted. Studied you how? Zira's voice dropped to a whisper. They took my blood. They ran experiments. They wanted to understand my DNA. Jake felt a chill crawl up his spine. Why? Zara hesitated. Then she lifted her hand. A soft glow pulsed from her fingertips. The air around them shifted, like invisible ripples spreading out. Jake's breath caught. What the hell? Nova kept her eyes on the road. They want to make humans like her. Stronger, faster, smarter. Zira nodded. My kind, we are different from humans in many ways. We do not age the same. We heal faster. We can connect with energy in ways humans cannot. Jake shook his head. You mean like telekinesis? Zira nodded. Among other things. Jake exhaled. Jesus. Nova chuckled. Yeah, kid. Welcome to the real world. Jake looked back at Zira. So these people who took you, they were trying to turn humans into your kind. Zira's expression darkened. Yes, and they succeeded. The truth about Nova. Jake turned to Nova. Wait, are you saying? Nova smirked. Bingo, genius. I'm one of their little experiments. Jake stared at her. So, you were normal once. Nova's smirk faded. Yeah, a long time ago. Zira turned to Nova. Her golden eyes sad. They changed you. Nova clenched her jaw. Yeah. And I'm not the only one. Jake swallowed. How many? Nova exhaled. Too many. And most of them didn't survive the process. Jake's blood ran cold. How far had the government gone? How many lives had they ruined? Nova met his eyes in the mirror. That's why we need to get Zira off this planet, before they get her again. Zira looked down. I do not even know where my ship is. Nova grinned. That's where you're wrong. Jake and Zira both looked at her. Nova smirked. I know exactly where they took it. Infiltrating the facility. The van pulled off the main road, stopping near an abandoned industrial complex on the outskirts of the city. Jake frowned. This is it. Nova killed the engine. No, this is the entrance. Zira tensed. Underground. Nova nodded. The real facility is buried beneath this place. High security, military-grade tech, and a whole lot of people who will shoot us on sight. Jake groaned. Fantastic. Nova grabbed a duffel bag from the backseat and tossed Jake a black vest. Put this on. Jake blinked. What is it? Body armor. You're squishy, and I don't want to drag your corpse out of there. Jake sighed but strapped it on. You have a lot of faith in me, huh? Nova smirked. Not really. Zira, meanwhile, closed her eyes. A soft hum filled the air as the glow around her intensified. Jake raised an eyebrow. What's she doing? Nova's expression turned serious. Powering up. Zira opened her eyes. They were blazing gold now. I am ready. Nova cracked her knuckles. Then let's go steal your ship. The betrayal. The industrial complex loomed before them. A dark skeleton of rusted metal and crumbling walls. It looked abandoned, but it wasn't. Beneath the ruins lay the real facility, hidden underground, guarded by an army of soldiers and scientists working for an organization that should not exist. Nova adjusted the strap of her rifle and smirked. All right, kids. Time to break into a top-secret government base and steal an alien spaceship. No pressure. Jake sighed. Yeah, totally normal Tuesday night. Zira, her golden eyes glowing softly, closed her eyes and stretched her fingers outward. A pulse of unseen energy rippled around them. Jake shivered. What was that? Zira opened her eyes. Sensors, motion detectors, cameras. I can feel them. There are many. Nova nodded. Good. That means we're in the right place. Jake clenched his fists. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a spy. He was just some guy who got caught up in something bigger than himself. But now he was going to war. The descent into darkness. They moved carefully through the ruins. The air was thick with dust, and the smell of rusting metal. Nova led them to a collapsed warehouse. Inside, hidden beneath layers of debris, was a massive steel hatch, partially buried in rubble. "This is it," Nova whispered. She pressed her hand against a small panel on the side of the hatch. A faint green light scanned her palm. Jake raised an eyebrow. "Wait, you have access to this place." Nova smirked. "What, you think I just wandered in one day and stole a ship? I used to work here, genius." Jake's stomach twisted. She worked for them. Zira tensed. "You were one of them." Nova's smirk faded. Not by choice. With a heavy metallic click, the hatch unlocked. The ground shook as the hatch slowly lifted, revealing a steel staircase leading deep into the earth. Cold air rushed up from below. It smelled sterile, artificial, like something unnatural was waiting beneath. Nova pulled her rifle off her back. No turning back now. Jake swallowed hard. This was it. They descended. The facility below. The underground corridors stretched endlessly, lined with cold metal walls and flickering white lights. The air was thick with the hum of hidden machinery. Jake's heart pounded. This was a place no normal person was supposed to see. Zira moved with eerie grace, her glowing eyes scanning everything. Nova led the way, her movements too precise, too familiar, as if she had walked these halls many times before. Jake whispered, "Where is everyone?" Nova frowned. "They're here. Trust me." She pressed against a door and peeked through a small window. Inside was a lab. Bright lights, white walls, massive glass tubes filled with something. Jake's stomach twisted. People were floating in the tubes. Their bodies were changed, their skin laced with silver veins, their eyes glowing like Zira's, but not quite right. Some of them weren't human anymore. Zira inhaled sharply. "They have been altered." Nova's fists clenched. "Yeah, they're making more of me." Jake shook his head. "This is insane." Then, a voice echoed over the speakers. "Well, well, look who finally came home." Nova's eyes went wide. Jake turned, just as a steel door slammed down behind them, trapping them inside. The betrayal. From the far end of the room, a figure stepped out of the shadows. A tall man, wearing a crisp black suit, his eyes cold as ice. Nova's face darkened. "You." Jake's gut told him this was bad. The man smiled. "It's been a long time, Nova. You could have been so much more. But instead, you turned into a disappointment." Jake stepped forward. "Who the hell are you?" The man ignored him. He was focused on Zira. "You," he said, tilting his head. "You are the key." Zira's glow pulsed brighter, but she didn't move. Jake clenched his fists. "Stay the hell away from her." The man chuckled. "Oh, I don't think so." Then, guards poured into the room, guns raised. Jake's heart dropped. They had walked straight into a trap. Nova turned to Zira. "Can you fight?" Zira's eyes blazed like fire. "Yes." Nova grinned. "Good." Then, all hell broke loose. The fight for survival. Jake hit the ground just as the first bullets ripped through the air. Zira threw out her hands, and a wave of golden energy exploded outward, knocking the soldiers off their feet. Nova moved like a ghost, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to dodge gunfire as she returned fire with deadly accuracy. Jake, he did what any normal person would do. He ran for cover. The man in the suit watched calmly, unfazed. Then he pressed something on his wrist. The lights flickered. The air shifted. And then, the containment tubes began to open. Jake turned just in time to see the altered people inside start to move. Their eyes snapped open, glowing, unnatural, inhuman. Zira's breath caught. "No." Nova cursed. "Shit. They're waking them up." The man smirked. "You want a war? Let's see if you survive one." The tubes shattered. The creatures inside stepped out. Their skin pulsed with silver veins, their fingers elongated into claws. And then, they charge. The escape plan. Jake barely dodged as one of the creatures swung at him, its claws slicing through the air. Nova shot 3 rounds into its chest. But it kept coming. "Bullets aren't doing shit," Jake shouted. Zura raised both hands, and a blast of energy hit one of the creatures, sending it flying backward. But there were too many. Nova growled. "We need to get out of here now." Jake pointed at a control panel. "That thing unlocked the doors before, right?" Nova grinned. "You're not as dumb as you look." She sprinted for the panel, dodging claws and gunfire. Zura fought like lightning, her movements impossibly fast, sending bursts of energy that tore through their attackers. Jake, he grabbed a metal pipe from the ground and swung wildly at anything that got too close. Nova reached the panel and slammed her fist against it. The doors blew open. "Go," she shouted. Jake didn't need to be told twice. They raced through the hallway, creatures chasing behind them. Nova led them down a side corridor. And suddenly, there it was, a massive silver spacecraft resting in the middle of a giant hangar. Zura's eyes widened. "My ship." Nova smirked. "Told you I'd find it." Jake's chest heaved. They had found the ship. But the enemy wasn't far behind. And this wasn't over yet. The final stand. The hangar was massive. Steel walls stretched high into darkness, lined with walkways and overhead platforms where red warning lights flashed. The floor was polished metal, reflecting the hulking spacecraft that sat in the center. Zura's ship. It was sleek, silver, almost organic-looking, its surface pulsing faintly like a living thing. Unlike Earth's crude metal machines, Zura's vessel hummed with raw energy, the kind of power that didn't belong to this planet. Jake barely had a second to take it in before the alarm started blaring. BZZT, BZZT. Warning. Security Boriachish, DT. Nova cursed. "We don't have time for sightseeing. Move." Behind them, the creatures were closing in, their silver-veined bodies twitching unnaturally, their glowing eyes locked on the escaping trio. Zura ran toward the ship's hatch, her glowing fingers moving in patterns across a holographic panel that flared to life at her touch. Jake turned to Nova. "How do we hold them off?" Nova's smirk was razor-sharp. "We don't. We stall." She raised her rifle, eyes locked on the approaching enemies. Jake saw it now. The way she moved, the way her muscles tensed before action. Nova wasn't just human anymore. She was a weapon. Then the creatures charge. The battle begins. Jake swung a metal pipe at the first mutated soldier, barely dodging its claws as it lunged for his throat. It screeched, its voice layered with something not human, before pouncing again. Jake ducked, rolled, and brought the pipe down on its skull. But the thing barely flinched. Nova wasn't holding back. Her rifle blazed, sending round after round into their attackers, aiming for weak spots, joints, skulls, anything to slow them down. But they didn't stop. "Zura, whatever you're doing, do it faster," Jake yelled. Zura's fingers flew across the holographic symbols, her eyes glowing brighter. "The security system is resisting. I need more time." Nova reloaded in a blur. "Time isn't on the menu, princess." Jake spun, barely dodging as another creature lunged. This time, he didn't swing the pipe. He shoved it straight through the thing's chest. The creature let out a strangled, metallic shriek, but something strange happened. It twitched violently, as if the metal was disrupting something inside it. Jake yanked the pipe free, and the creature collapsed, convulsing. Nova saw it and smirked. "Oh, hell yeah. That's good to know." She pulled a combat knife from her belt and plunged it into another creature's neck. The moment the metal pierced its skin, it started seizing, like something inside it was short-circuiting. Jake's mind raced. They're not fully organic. They're running on something else. Metal screws them up. Nova laughed. Too bad for them. Bullets are metal. She spun, firing 3 rounds into a creature's skull, and this time, it dropped like a rock. Jake turned to Zura. Hurry. Zura's hands were a blur over the controls. The ship whined, energy surging through it as lights flared across its hull. Then, the hatch opened. Zura's eyes flashed. Inside. Now. Nova grabbed Jake and shoved him forward. Jake stumbled up the ramp, Zura close behind him. Nova turned, still firing as she backed up, until the last second, when she spun and leaped inside just as the hatch sealed shut. The creatures outside screamed, slamming against the ship, their bodies distorting as they tried to force their way in. Then, the engines roared to life. The escape. The ship shook violently as Zura gripped the pilot's console, her golden eyes locked on the control panel. Activating primary thrusters. Jake barely got into a seat before the entire ship lurched. Outside, the hangar's walls split open, revealing the launch tunnel, a dark shaft leading straight up to the surface. Nova strapped in beside him. If she screws this up, we'll be a crater in about 5 seconds. Jake swallowed. I really hate flying. Nova smirked. You're gonna hate it more in a second. Then, the ship shot upward. The force slammed Jake back into his seat, his stomach twisting as they blasted through the tunnel at impossible speed. Below them, explosions rocked the hangar. Then, the sky opened up. For the first time, Jake saw Earth from above. The stars stretched out endlessly, and below, the planet glowed like a giant blue gem. It was beautiful. It was also not safe. Because a fleet was waiting for them. The space battle. Jake barely had time to process what he was seeing before multiple enemy ships broke formation. Small, sleek black fighters that looked nothing like Earth's technology. Nova tensed. Well, that's bad. Jake turned to Zura. Tell me you have weapons. Zura's fingers moved over the controls. Yes, but they are limited. Jake groaned. Perfect. Then, the first blast hit them. The ship shook violently, warning lights flashing. Nova gripped her seat, grinning. All right, princess. Let's see if you can outfly them. Zura's eyes blazed. Hold on. Then, she made the ship disappear. The final betrayal. The ship vanished from sight, fading into the stars as the enemy fleet fired blindly into empty space. Jake's breath caught. We're cloaked. Zura nodded. For now. Nova let out a low whistle. Nice trick. Then, something changed. Zura's hands froze over the controls. Jake frowned. Zira, what's wrong? Zura's golden eyes flickered. Something is interfering. Someone is trying to. Then, a voice echoed through the ship's speakers, a voice Jake recognized. Well done, Zira, but you didn't think I'd let you get away that easily, did you? Jake's blood ran cold. It was the man from the facility. Nova cursed. No, that's not possible. Then, the entire ship powered down. Everything went black. Jake's heart pounded. What the hell just happened? Zura's voice was barely a whisper. They hacked my ship. Jake froze. Nova gritted her teeth. We need to go. Now. But before they could move, the air shimmered. And suddenly, figures appeared on the ship. Jake's breath caught. The enemy had teleported onto the bridge. And at the front of them, the man in the suit. He smiled. You didn't really think you won, did you? Jake's stomach dropped. They had lost. A new beginning, or the end. The bridge was silent, except for the faint hum of Zura's ship, now hijacked, controlled by someone else. The lights flickered, casting eerie shadows over the cold metal walls. Jake's heart pounded. The man in the suit stood in front of them, calm, confident, unshaken. Behind him, 6 armed operatives, all clad in sleek, black tactical gear, held their weapons ready to fire. And then there were the other two figures. Two of the mutated hybrids, their silver-veined skin twitching, their glowing eyes locked onto Zira. They weren't just soldiers. They were failed experiments, living proof of what the organization had been trying to create. And now, they were here to end this fight before it truly began. The last stand. Zira's golden eyes blazed, her fingers twitching at her sides. She wasn't afraid. She was calculating, looking for an opening. Nova, however, was tense, her jaw tight. She knew exactly who they were up against. Jake? He just knew they were screwed. The man in the suit sighed. I have to say, I'm impressed. You made it this far, stole our most valuable asset, and even managed to get off-world. His cold blue eyes locked onto Zira. But you know how this ends, don't you? Zira's voice was quiet, but firm. You will not win. The man smirked. I already have. He gestured toward the ship. Your vessel. It belongs to us now. As if to prove his point, the control panels flashed red, screens displaying a single command. OVE complete. Jake felt his stomach drop. Zira's ship was no longer theirs. Nova cursed under her breath. They locked us out. The man in the suit took a slow step forward. Surrender now, and I promise you, this will be painless. His icy gaze landed on Jake. And as for you, well, you were just collateral damage. A normal human, caught up in something beyond him. A pity, really. Jake's fists clenched. Yeah, well, screw you two. Nova smirked. I like this kid. The man sighed. Very well. He lifted a hand, and his operatives raised their weapons. Jake barely had a second to react before. Zira moved. The power of the bond. The air shimmered, and suddenly Zira was a blur of golden light, her energy exploding outward. The soldiers fired, but the bullets never reached her. She stopped them midair. Jake's breath caught. The bullets floated, held in place by an invisible force, before reversing, slamming back into the attackers with lethal precision. 3 dropped instantly. Nova lunged forward, disarming one before snapping his rifle in half like it was paper. She moved with terrifying speed, her enhanced reflexes turning her into a one-woman army. Jake? He grabbed the nearest weapon and swung wildly, catching one of the creatures across the face. It barely flinched. The thing turned, snarling, and grabbed him by the throat. Jake choked, his vision blurring as cold, unnatural hands tightened around his neck. Then, a blinding surge of warmth rushed through his body. The pain vanished. His skin tingled with raw, unfamiliar energy. Zira turned, her eyes glowing brighter than ever, her hand outstretched toward Jake. She had connected with him. And suddenly, Jake wasn't just human anymore. Becoming something more. Time slowed. Jake could see everything. The way the creature moved, the way its muscles twitched before it struck. He ducked. The creature swung, but Jake was already moving, his body reacting faster than his mind. And then, instinctively, he threw out his hand. A pulse of energy exploded from his palm. The creature flew backward, crashing into the far wall with bone-shattering force. Jake gasped. He turned to Zira. What the hell was that? Zira's voice was soft, but certain. You and I are bonded now. Jake's mind spun. What does that even mean? Zira didn't answer. She didn't have to. Because Jake could feel it. Something inside him had changed. And the man in the suit knew it, too. For the first time, he looked afraid. The turning point. The remaining soldiers hesitated. Nova took advantage of the moment, grabbing a fallen rifle and unloading into the last hybrid. Jake, still reeling from what had just happened, turned to Zira. Can we take the ship back? She nodded. But I will need time. Nova smirked. Then let's buy you some. She turned back to the man in the suit. Sorry, boss, she said, but you're out of time. and she shot him in the leg. The man cried out, collapsing to one knee. His soldiers, what was left of them, finally broke. They ran. Nova stepped forward, gun still raised. I should kill you. The man laughed bitterly. Go ahead, but it won't change what's coming. Nova hesitated. Jake could see it. She wanted to pull the trigger. But Zara stepped forward. No, she said. Nova frowned. Why not? Zara looked at the man, her glowing eyes unreadable. He is already beaten. And she was right. The once invincible man, the one who controlled this whole operation, was bleeding on the floor, his plan shattered, his soldiers dead or gone. He had lost. Nova let out a breath and lowered the gun. Fine. Let's get the hell out of here. A new beginning. Zara returned to the ship's console. Her fingers moved fast, overriding the system. The ship flared back to life. Jake collapsed into the seat beside her, his heart still pounding. Nova took the co-pilot's chair, stretching her legs. Well, that was fun. Jake groaned. You have a weird definition of fun. Nova grinned. You'll get used to it. The ship's engines hummed, preparing for launch. Zara turned to Jake. You have a choice, she said softly. You can return home, or you can come with us. Jake's breath caught. He looked out the viewport, Earth below, endless stars above. He thought about everything, his old life, the normal world he had once known. But after tonight, he wasn't normal anymore. He met Zara's eyes. Let's go. Zara smiled. Nova chuckled. Knew you'd say that. Then, the ship jumped into hyperspace, leaving Earth behind. For good.